Namaste. Welcome to Shamanshed. Today I'm talking with Mike Kielty. Mike is a YouTuber and researcher into the field of UFOs and the possibility that they may be some sort of biological entity. His channel is called New Game, New Rules, and it was really interesting to get a completely different perspective on UFOs, cattle mutilations, and the idea that UFOs could be some sort of biological entity. So, without further ado, we welcome Mike to Shamanshed. On that, the term notchback, just for, obviously there are people who are going to be listening to this who have never heard that term before and they're not familiar. Could you just give a brief, outline what it is that a notchback is, in terms of your findings and why it's called a notchback, and how it relates to being some sort of organism or cell, just so that the people who may not have heard this before have some sort of context.
I've got an important message.
Absolutely.
And here's what happened. The STS tether incident was a famous incident because, when I was a kid, they played the STS videos in our classrooms. It was important stuff. This was mind-blowing technology. So everyone was watching, but there's an incident where they're doing an experiment and they put out this high voltage electromagnetic experiment, and all of a sudden in the videos these circular objects show up and they have notches in the back, which is where the nickname came from. But the problem is when you look at the video, they're all very similar. They look like they have some intelligence to them. And now all of a sudden I'm going back to my old pictures. Oh gosh, here's these 4 pictures. They match. And now in the last few years, here's this god-awful amount on YouTube. My God, you can find videos of notchbacks left and right. I feel like a professor correcting people. That's a notchback. It's not an orb. That's, they call it all kinds of things. But here's the thing. I took that video and I went to the Soyuz 7 mission. There's videos of notchbacks above our atmosphere in outer space. Tons of these guys, not 1 or 2. There's like 100 of them. Some of them are floating, kicking back. Some of them are hauling ass. Some of them are going through the thermosphere and not burning up. And there's a police video that's included in my shots. I tried to cherry pick the important stuff out of like 4 terabytes of data. It wasn't easy. And then try to compress it to 20 minutes because people don't like long videos. So this was like an impossible task. But here's the thing is there's a police video, I think it's out of Georgia, of one coming through the thermosphere and flying by, and he's got someone pulled over, and both the guys are looking at this thing going, what in the heck is that? But it's a beautiful picture because you can clearly see the notch in the back. Now, this guy that sued NASA said that the similarities to an amoeba, which is a single-cell organism, for the science behind it, I don't want to have everyone bored to death here, but it's like the simplest version of life. It's stupid life. It's like a chicken. It walks around kind of aimlessly. It doesn't have much purpose other than eat and go to the bathroom and try to stay alive as long as it can. And the problem is we're talking about something you look underneath a microscope that I'm comparing to something in space. The tether incident, the tether was 12.7 miles long approximately. I've studied this. And if you look at the notchbacks behind it, that makes them potentially 2 to 3 to 4 miles big. And NASA's not going to go, yeah, that's something that's alive, that's out there. So I went to the basics with my science, and I said, first off, is this real? And I took a bunch of videos, more of the recent ones. One of them was the river, one of them was Georgia. And I started comparing all of these, and I had about 300 videos. I cut it down to about 50. And then I took the video, downloaded it into a MP4 format, made a 3D model of it, and then I compared 30 of the best ones, and I tried to get similar angles, and then I broke it down. God, this is like OCD science. Shoot me.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
It's what I do. I can't explain it. My pop says I'm wired wrong, or differently, pardon me, not wrong, differently. But now I broke it down. Who does this? to the angles, because now I have the pictures above the thermosphere in outer space, and I can compare different angles. Now I can do it from Earth. But what was interesting was the first thing I had to do is prove it was real. So I made these models. I compared them all. They were all the exact same thing, except for one difference. They were taken from locations all over the world and in space. And they're the same damn thing. So this thing is real. Now I've identified it. I kind of already knew that answer, but I still did the science because that's how weird I am. And I wanted to prove it 100%. I didn't want to miss anything here. And I've been doing this now for 25 years, God help me, little by little looking at the pictures, but more and more has been revealed. And now the guy that sued NASA compared an amoeba to the 4-mile wide one that's out in space. And they have the exact same characteristics of movement. You can identify the anatomy of it. So now I went OCD again, and I microed every little subcategory. I swear to you, this is insane, but what can we identify as body parts? How does it move? What's the color of it? What's its social behavior by itself when it's in a group? Because there's tons of video of groups of them. I'm so convinced that these are the cattle mutilator guys that I've actually been working with law enforcement, and I got to be real careful because the government doesn't really want this secret out. I think you can understand the parallel here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is literally like a WikiLeaks dump doing on you.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just early from other people picking up on it because I see the similarities and I've named the anatomy. But this Dr. Joseph did an article on it. He actually did probably some books on it, multiples, but and I'm just giving him credit because I'm being honest here. That's what good scientists do and I'm a junior nothing ball compared to this guy. This guy's vocabulary makes me look like chicken, nothing. But that doesn't mean I can't perform good science. So I microed all these little categories and I started looking at the character traits. And here's the interesting thing. Is I did that a long time ago, and little by little, the information came in, if that makes sense. We're at a point now, thanks to all of our internet sources, that I think we can solve a ton more, and I'm completely positive. But the movements of the amoeba are the exact same as the notchback, but it doesn't make sense on the scale. So we'll skip the scale and we'll go to the similarities. In one of my videos, I show a guy pointing a laser, one of those little laser lights up in the sky, and the thing runs from it like it's fending for its life. That's the same.
I saw that one. Yeah.
Did you see that? Awesome.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Yeah.
If you actually, I've got videos, believe it or not, of amoeba under a microscope with the same thing, and the thing runs away. But guess what? It has the same movements and it's running for its life. The pattern isn't similar, it's uncannily identical. Does that make crazy sense? Except for one thing. This guy is in a petri dish and this guy's flying. So I just started breaking everything down and I said, this is nuts. I mean, I'm going to tell you the truth because I'm experimenting, doing a hypothesis on something that's ludicrous. This isn't there. Anyway, so I start doing all the breakdowns, and all of a sudden I went back to the STS video and a couple others, and I'll tell you some of my tricks. And it's simple stuff, it's common sense, but a lot of people are going to go, oh gosh, that's genius. I went back to that video, and in the video, it's kind of like zoomed in at the best look that you can, and a large one flies by, but something protrudes out of it, retracts, and then the notch changes to another direction. And I believe the notch is the same as the amoeba has a notch in the back. I think it's adapted to use that to fly and use it as a rudder. And the interesting thing is we went for all the similarities between the amoeba and a notchback, and they're 100%. It's not 90, 99, it's 100. They run away from the laser beam light. They're attracted towards electromagnetic activity, hence the STS-75 experiment. You guys in your neck of the woods have France. This is why I'm doing it. I feel terrible. There's some country guy in France, and I'm being serious here. I want to show you where my heart is, that may have lost 100 cattle or horse or whatever, and that's his livelihood. And we've got coronavirus and all kinds of crap going on. this guy's out of business.
Yeah.
And people think farmers just, all of a sudden these animals pop up on their farm and they make they got to pay for a lot of stuff. I'm in farm
Yeah.
country, so I know. So, but also there's human mutilations involved. So I want to get to those people because families
Okay.
probably want to know what happened to them. But here's the amoeba comparison. I'm sorry, I bounced off of it. Um,
Don't know.
the
No,
the
sorry, I'll let you carry on. Sorry.
the video, the STS video. I apologize. I bounce around.
No,
Uh,
that's absolutely
I
fine.
had a bunch of tea and caffeine, it's a lot of data, and it's so important. But the other similarities, it was attracted to the electromagnetic activity. It ran away from the laser light. Um, there were two things that protruded from the front of it, and they're called, uh, geez, I can't, false feet. I can't believe I forgot the name of it. I'll think of it in a second. I
Yeah, yeah,
apologize.
that's fine.
Uh, Pseudopods, and they're nicknamed false feet because they stick out of an amoeba, and that's what it uses to move. It pokes down in the ground and it pulls itself. It's one of the basic forms of movement. These things are like a Texas Instrument calculator from the 1980s. Their memory is really simplistic of just the basic needs of survival. And the same comparison, I found an amoeba that looks almost identical to these notchbacks, and it even has the notch in the back.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I'm going, this is insane, but it matches the movement, the way it eats. They eat bacteria, except for there's one difference. It seems as though they've evolved, and there's a part that I can't answer, and that is it appears to have some type of a weaponry, I guess you could call it. It's learned to adapt to hunt extremely, extremely deadly. And okay.
Well,
Well,
on that point, in terms of
please.
the cattle mutilations, and you've mentioned some human ones. This is something that's sort of plagued people, for a long time, and there's
Absolutely.
never been
400 years is the
yeah,
first recorded cattle mutilation.
exactly. And I mean, so in terms of you know looking at these things as organic, cells, amoeba-like beings, what is their attraction to, say, cows or humans? We talk about them being attracted to some things, electromagnetism. What is it about them that is attracting them to those things? And I've seen your video on you explained you know how they might be feeding, in terms of plasma and things. Could you just give us an explanation, a little bit about that, and as to why they might be feeding on cows or even
Sure.
us? Yeah.
I, I don't think they're feeding on humans, and I'll tell you why. And this sounds crazy. Now, I want to clarify the ones that I sit in outer space were like 4 miles wide. The ones at cattle mutilation sites, they found depressions in the soil here in the continental United States and elsewhere that were approximately 8 to 15 feet in diameter. So I don't know if they blow off part of their shell when they come through the thermosphere. I don't know if they split into multiples, but going back to that amoeba comparison for 1 second, they do fission and they split into two, and it's just basic science. But there's actually video of that occurring,
Yeah.
and that is like conclusive proof that this is what we're seeing. Because if you think UFO and you think like the government wants you to think like it's a metal craft, it's not going to make any sense, and that's perfect for them. But if you start naming off the anatomy and going, God, that's fission, they're probably not going to be as pleased. But there's video that I've pieced together of its, I don't want to say weapon system, that doesn't sound right, of it, its defense mechanisms, I guess. And I got it from a bunch of different sources, but one is there's amazing pictures of giant circular guys, and I don't see a notch, and they have the tail, and I hope you saw it. I hope I included it in there somewhere. And it's moving video of it dipping its tail into the sun, and it looks like it's absorbing it, utilizing its energy somehow. It's literally playing with the sun. And so I took that into the formula that there can absolutely be something living that's enormous that somehow has mutated to where it's able to fly in space and somehow harness the power of plasma. And then I thought to myself, you're losing it, dude. And I'm being honest, right? I mean, come on, because it sounds nuts. But I went and I looked at testimony from one of the cattle mutilations that was a really important one, I thought. And it was a guy that may be one of the only witnesses that lived, that's a human, that walked up, saw a cattle being dragged away. Two other ones were like, making noises for their life. And he heard what sounded like a buzzing electrical arc welder, and the thing was yelping. He got the heck out of there, came back. I think he went to get help. And ironically, one animal was missing, another one was partially injured, and the other one was still scared. So he may be the only witness, but I took that little piece and put it into one of my hypotheses and said somehow these guys have harnessed the power of plasma, and they're somehow going through only, it was really blatantly obvious, the soft tissue parts, the rear end and the mouth only. They're going in, they don't have a bone structure or teeth. So they're having to basically, like an octopus going into a beer bottle, force their way in, unfortunately. And so now I'm going, God, I'm absolutely insane. So now all of a sudden this thing is like a flying octopus, right? I mean, this doesn't make any sense. An octopus can't fly. Come on. And then I looked at the video closer and I realized it moves like a frisbee, but there's two little things that come out on top. And I don't know if it's the pseudopods or something different. I believe it's something different, and it somehow harnesses plasma power. And I said, this is crazy, but if you take a grape, cut it in half, put it in your microwave, please don't do this, but there's videos online. But if you take it and you put it side by side with the flat part on top and run the microwave, the grape will absorb the radiation and make plasma. And you can actually shoot off a little poof. Now, some people in Romania did some science with that and had basically a microwave that wouldn't blow up, that would be able to contain this. And they found that all of a sudden they invented these plasma life forms that interacted with each other like the single cell amoebas do.
Right.
And I'm thinking to this is mind blowing. Why isn't this like on the front page? Instead, we got Trump, Trump, Trump. Sorry, but I'm being honest,
Yeah.
and he's like stolen our news, but this is real news to me. Uh, and I believe I went back to cattle mutilations. There's two here in the area that are local, but I went back to the FBI files, which is a great source. They black everything out, but there's still information in there to be gathered. So I took as much as I could and absorbed it. And there was a lot of information in there that led me to believe this is an airborne creature of some type that is adapted over time. And now we have video of it. And the irony is I've spoken with a lot of cattle people. What they think happens is either it's flying and two little cords come down from it. And I know this sounds absolutely insane, but if you look up an amoeba, they're the craftiest shape-shifting little engineers possible. And I've seen videos of these in a laboratory where these spikes come out at times. And I don't know if it's a predatory move. No one's been able to crack that. But if it's doing the same thing and it's able to provide suction, which is one of its mechanisms for living, like an amoeba does here, it would go after cattle because they're in a 2,000-pound category. Now remember, let's think this thing's 15 foot in diameter. It doesn't want to eat a sparrow. It wants a meal. Now
Yeah.
it's gonna go through its rear end. It's gonna go through its mouth. I'm sorry. I'm gonna try to keep this as clean as possible, and it's gonna use that end somehow with the plasma, and it cuts away like a serrated knife, little by little, liquefying it. Now, why does it do that? Well, what an amoeba does here on Earth is it's after one simple thing. It's not a complex organism. It doesn't want a milkshake. It wants bacteria. And
Yeah.
there's two things that are in these cattle ranches. There's a bunch of poop in the ground that's growing bacteria, which might be what's attracting them. They may be feeding off the ground soil, and the animals stumble upon them. That could be part of it, and that's why they end up getting taken out. Or they're going after the cattle and they're feeding off of it, which makes sense. And they actually, potentially, as crazy as this sounds, shows you how nuts I am, through fission, they could feed each other, believe it or not. So I think it's a food source, as crazy as it sounds. I think that the plasma portion of it is a weapon, if as you would, or an eating resource. And then I believe that through the reading that I've done, they found, I apologize, I won't pronounce it correctly, but I put it into videos, cholestrium, something of that nature. I had some seizures, so I'm missing some teeth, so I can't pronounce certain words. Don't feel bad.
Okay. No,
Uh,
sure.
so it feels like a mouthful of razor blades when I pronounce, and I just can't roll the tongue. But it's an important word because two factors. One is there's like six strains of this cholestrium, and one of them is called blackleg, and blackleg
Okay.
is a terrible thing. But if you look it up, it's like botulism or like the black plague for ranchers. You
Yeah.
know, it's something you don't want. But what's interesting is when I looked it up, it affects the jaw, it affects the heart area in the center and the rear end. And those are the places that are all cored out. And I thought to myself, here's a great hypothesis. What if these critters are injecting that bacteria in them, which they're holding in their body, which is what amoebas do for part of their food process, and inject that into them, and then that digests it faster and makes it easier to break down. Now, this is going to sound nuts, but I went and I followed this guy named uh, this is where I came to these conclusions. I apologize, it's a longer version, but I want to give you the truth here.
Yeah.
It's important. There's a guy who's really, really interesting. Have you heard of Skinwalker Ranch?
No, no, I haven't. No.
Okay.
I'll definitely check
This
that
is,
out.
no, no, it's all good. There's a guy who is a billionaire. He owns a place called Bigelow Aerospace, and they invented it's kind of like an inflatable, made out of material expansion for the International Space Station. And it was more cost effective. The guy's a genius. He's really smart. But I forget where he gets his money from. I think he was heir to a hotel chain, something like whatever it is. He's filthy rich. He gets to do whatever he wants in life. And he's a government contractor, so he can't talk. Now, he, with all this money in life, can be sitting on some island with 22 half naked girls, or he could be chasing UFOs, and he's chasing UFOs. So I followed his track, and his track was real simple. He went to Colares, Para, which is in South America, and it's probably the most interesting case, in my opinion. And it's probably 20 years old, but in the town of Colares, I want to paint this picture for your listeners. It's important. It's like a island, kind of, sort of, like a little one that's not that far off from the coast. It faces Africa, but there's a water inlet from the rivers that goes right past it and into the ocean. So you're converting from fresh water to salt water. Okay, it's important. Amoebas can't live in salt water. Sounds crazy. They're not found in salt water. They're found in fresh water. Colaris para, that fresh water, is probably like an aerated fish tank. If I had a shark tank and I was spoiling them and I won the lottery, you know, and I got every attachment, that's what this area is because of the way the water's flowing and it's aerating through there. And there's probably tons of algae and bacteria on the bottom for them to feed off. But I believe that they were kicking back there. This is my hypothesis, and I have the file on it. I had to translate it from Portuguese to English, which is extremely difficult, but there's so much fact and pictures and drawings. And what happened was these guys got attacked by these things that look like flying notchbacks that had little hoses come down and extend from them and bite them on the neck and suck their blood and make that neck area numb. And I said, this is insane, but I'm going to keep reading because this is the equivalent of an FBI file from uh, the country of Para. And I actually have the file now, and there's so many interesting things in there, but this isn't one witness. This is a whole village. These aren't people. These are people that live in peace, that fish, sell their fish, get money, buy what they need, go back to work, repeat the next thing. These aren't people that are complicated that want to have TV cameras, the military down there. That's not their forte. And the military ended up coming down because so many people got attacked, and they nicknamed them Chupa Chupas which translated means suckers, because so many people were waking up with bite marks. They were coming into their houses, and to defend themselves, they shot off fireworks, lit fires. I mean, this is almost, if an apocalypse happened right now outside my house, and I'm being dead serious with you, where these suckers were outside, everything that's detailed in here is common sense, what you or I would do to defend ourselves from it. There's nobody saying, oh yeah, I saw God on a carpet, came down and told me to do this. Nobody embellished anything. It was all very, um, everything was almost identical. There's pictures of the wounds, but here's the interesting thing, was the doctor's report, the forensics stated that there was another form of that cholestrium, and I didn't realize it, but that bacteria is used to make Botox, and Botox has a numbing effect. So I put two and two together and I said, now a cattle's out in the field, this little hose comes down, it makes him numb where it goes in on the injection site, so he's not feeling it. It injects a deadly bacteria into him, which it's held in its stomach, which is now empty. It now starts multiplying, it speeds it up, it cores it out, it takes off. And here's the interesting thing is there's been cattle that have been found on telephone poles and on the highway and in weird places. Now, some of those areas had tornadoes, and it's a real slim chance, but it could happen that some wind picked them up or something abnormal or of that nature. But there's a lot of them in areas that don't have tornadoes. And so the thesis that I went with was, it's not a helicopter. People are seeing things in the sky that are flying and having lights. Um, it always has no remnants of anything left behind as far as any investigative data. It seems like a dead end. And what I came to find out was there was two types of sites. There was one that was a kill site, and there was one where it had been dropped. So my thesis is, sometimes I think they're on the ground and they feed, and sometimes they're in the air. I don't think they always do it the same way. And I can prove that because some of the sites with the pictures that I have, the soil's undisturbed, there's no bushes smashed down, and others, believe it or not, a lot of investigators missed it. There's a big path that looks like something crawled through it and crushed a bunch of stuff. And it's just, I started putting all these stupid pieces together, breaking it down to where literally in the last 2 years, I swear to you, I ran out of things to multiply on the bottom end, to magnify this anymore and get to the core of it. And I came to the conclusion, these things are real. There's too many videos. There's too much information. Some dude that's a genius sued NASA. I mean, that's a big statement. But there's so many other things. There was a space flight where the passenger that was a female screams when something approaches their, I believe it's the ISS. And it was comical to me because I said, it's a notchback saying hi, checking it out. They're curious, but I don't think they kill humans intentionally. The animals, I do believe they're feeding. I do believe that that's a feeding source because of the bacteria. And I'm damn near 100% positive on that, because that's what amoebas do here on Earth, is they go after the bacteria. But here's an interesting tidbit for your listeners. I didn't mention this, but humans have only been around, I'm not sure what the actual age is, but we can definitely say less than 1,000,000 years. Amoebas have been around for 3.8 to 4 billion years and have had a lot of time to evolve. And it's really frightening to see something microscopic like a virus. I mean, just thinking about it and me even saying it is nuts. There's a virus flying by at 200 miles an hour. But that seems to be the case. And so now I followed Colaris and I said, oh my gosh, these suckers, let me find something else. And it wasn't far away in Sao Paulo, Brazil, that there's a really publicized human mutilation case. And it wasn't what I was looking for, to be honest with you. The pictures are X-rated, let's put it that way, as far as grossness but it gives a lot of information. Plus there's an autopsy report. Autopsy reports are highly credible from doctors, especially forensic people. So I went and I read the report, and what did they mention in there? Just like the cattle mutilations. I went back to some other reports, and somebody went after the Dyatlov Pass incident, just like the cattle mutilation. And I started going, oh my God, not only is there a pattern of a bunch of these guys flying in space, the pattern of human mutilations and cattle mutilations is matching. So I went back and I meshed all my little hypotheses together, and I came to the conclusion that these are the culprits. And I came up with, I remember I had to go through 4 terabytes of data again. I apologize. This is, and pull a miracle out of my butt, and make a 20-minute video. That's not easy, and then
No.
prove each thing. Uh, and I don't know that that was the right approach, but I wanted people to look at it because it was so important. Um, don't forget, there's also a case that's an old military case. I believe it's in our Antarctica. I know it's in one of my videos. Um, what the ship found was something come out under the water that was, I forget the size of it. I'm going to guess and say like 50 foot in diameter. I know I'm pretty close. I try to be real accurate. But it came out of the water, it was flying, and according to the uh, documents that were released, they made the comment that they didn't want to aggravate it by shooting at it because this thing was doing things that they couldn't do because they can't fly and go submersible and they're a boat. So, that's some frightening technology right off the bat to be seeing, and it
Yeah.
was right next to them. And it was, there's been a lot of articles written about it, but I found it interesting. The movements are the same with the notchback, but it's in salt water and it doesn't make sense. So I said, what could this be? And the irony is there was a description at one point in one of the articles that I read. It said that it was pill-formed with 2L appendages. And if you look up bacteria, I just drew a picture for you of what bacteria looks like. It looks like a pill with 2 little L appendages on it. And I said, this is getting so wacky. I said, I gotta like switch dispensaries or something because it doesn't, I mean, if you think about it, who in their right mind would pursue this any farther, sir? Who? I mean, and
Mm.
here I am, let's take it as far as I can. And I just came to the conclusions that these guys are real. I backtracked a lot of it. There was an incident over the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., where this is called the Pentagon flap. I think it's in the 70s where like a dozen of these guys flew right overhead,
Yeah.
and that's a no-fly zone. And jets were scrambled, and it was highly publicized. It was in the newspaper, but there was a cheat. Somebody said, "Here's a picture of it." Nobody grabbed the picture of it, unfortunately, but it's a reflection of the lights. But that's okay. The picture's false, but the story's true. And what's interesting is in the reports, it has the same movements, and those movements are simple. It's intelligently controlled, but it's not the smartest critter in the world, with the way it's moving. But if you think of I can tell you the motion because I've done this so many times on the 3D designs. If you picture a frisbee that's made out of silicone, and then you put a little glob of ice cream in the middle just for the shape of it, and it's upside down, and you twist it, and you have the outer edges shrink in, and then it contracts and goes back and forth. It's a flying frisbee. And I still don't understand the dynamics of it. Please, I understand how an aircraft flies. I understand lift. It doesn't make sense to me, but I'm seeing it on video, and I'm not. I think it's there. I'm
Yeah.
positive, and I'm watching it fly, and it has
Yeah.
a hovering pattern, and you can distinctly see the nucleus twisting in the middle and it expanding and contracting, and you can see when it's flying, it gets a flutter on its outer edges, just as it would if it were swimming underwater. It has like a fast mode, to so speak, and I just keep seeing this video everywhere. So we went back, and I told myself I needed to take a break, and I said I wanted to go back to some original moon pictures. That always relaxes me. And what do I see on there? Son of a gun. A bunch of white blotches that they said were like coffee stains, and then there were like pubic hairs, and then there was coffee stains for real and scratches. And I'm thinking to myself, what kind of party is going on in a super secret place like NASA where they develop these pictures where there's hairs and white coffee stains and black? And I know what a coffee stain looks like, just so you know, because I'm human. I've spilt enough of them myself. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? But I also looked up all the things that can happen to camera film. Then I looked up the Hasselblad cameras, which is what they used. Then I went, I think it's Germany, the company that invented the special film that's full spectrum. And then I said, aha, they're picking up on something we may not be able to see with our naked eye normally. They may be in a transparent stage. They have more than one color, and it's the same thing because I've made the 3D models of them to compare, except there's a blue color, there's a green, there's a red, and then there's a clear. And I'm positive on this, and I don't know if there's a digestive process going on, but there seems to be a bioluminescent effect either from the processing of the radiation converted into the plasma or something else. And that's where it's hard. I don't have a sample. I'm going off of pictures and trying to get as much data as I can. And there's still a little bit more that I think will be revealed, but I'm convinced that it has those stringy little things coming down. And the picture from the guy in Sao Paulo, Brazil is something good to look up if you're interested. Not the pictures, but the actual autopsy report, because it was so imperative in there. It said that this human was hit by two things at a time. So it's coming out like the supossed possibly modified itself and get real stringy and long, or it's on the ground and it is the supossed and they're creating a vacuum through its body. And it's made out of a material that's very similar with a jellyfish, just to be clear. I don't know that I said this in the videos, and I again, there was so much data to jam in there, but people have found samples that have fallen from the sky, and it turns out that they had the same composition as octopus tentacles, believe it or not, which is just lipids and proteins. And last time I checked and I looked up in the air, that's not where my aquarium's supposed to be. It's supposed to be in the ocean, So it's really confusing when I kept doing this data, but I looked at the Colaris Para incident. I got all the files. There's autopsy report. And once you compare them all, these people came to the same conclusion that I did long ago that, of its general description. And it was a crazy general description. Suction cup marks are found at the kill sites of cattle, squishy marks in the ground, flattened bushes. The blood's drained every single time.
Yeah. So something I wanted to ask you in relation to this, that something you've mentioned already. You've mentioned about the cows and bacteria, specifically bacteria. And something that you mentioned in another one of your videos is to do with fungi and fungus, and which is another, it's another thing that's been around like amoebas for millions and millions of years. Absolutely. And something that we actually as humans have a lot of our DNA is actually linked with fungi. I just wanted to find out I think there's a video where you show what appears to be some sort of fungi, and I just got eyes in with it. And also, you spoke about cow dung and bacteria. I don't know whether there's some sort of link there in terms of lots of mushrooms that grow out of fungi and stuff like that. And the mycelium of mushrooms, is like an internet of it's like carries information.
I didn't even think of that tying in. That's awesome. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and that was something that I picked up, and hearing you talk about cow dung and stuff like there's it's linked, isn't it? And they talk about fungi being in the universe for millions of years, and it's a carrier of information, and it's like the more spiritual people would say it's like an elder. It stores information and stuff. But I just wanted to find out what you had found in terms of beings that you've suggested that are related to fungi, and how this ties in with the notchbacks and with the amoeba.
Well, the bacteria, it's really interesting, I actually looked up, this is so boring, believe it or not, the theory behind what I do is I'm going through every single living creature known to man, from single cell or, all the way up to advanced. And I went through it again, categorizing, and it was interesting. a good majority of amoebas, their number one source was ground soil. And how do they feed? They punch their pseudopods into the ground. This is microscopic level again, and they feed off the bacteria. And I said, it kind of makes sense because I'm trying to figure out why they're attracted to the ranch, not to the cattle killing. I'm hypothesizing that they may be there for something else, and that's part of the deal. So I have to look at the full spectrum, but I firmly believe that they can feed off the ground traditionally like an amoeba. Even if they've advanced and they have a new feeding source like the cattle, they can still feed off the ground traditionally. They haven't lost that feature because their pseudopods are clearly seen in many of the videos and they utilize them regularly. I mean, it is an understatement. But I went back to some simple definitions like the Wikipedia definition. And I know that sounds stupid, but I had to start somewhere with a simple definition. And the biggest issue was there were holes punched in the ground in twos, in pairs, and they were approximately 6 to 12 inches in diameter and sometimes up to 3 feet deep, and they were new, not old prints. But they said we can't figure out what this is. And then they also named some suction cup marks, and I said, this is getting insane. This is really all meshing together. But I do believe the bacteria from the cattle poop, for some reason, attracts them. Maybe uh, I'm still trying to. I'm not going to lie to you and say I got this guy 100% memorized because I don't have all the data and I don't know how they think. And that's, me being critically honest with you. But what I think is they obviously are in the survival mode. So either I think that they're eating near the cows after there's been a big area and there's bacteria and probably some rain, and the cows come over and interrupt them and then become a meal, or they're going after the cows. But I actually think they're getting the cows, and I'll tell you why. In France, there's been 100 and 200 head at a shot, one shot in one night. So there's all these theories of cults and the government's behind it, and they got the best doctor in the world with some laser surgical equipment.
Mm.
All that crap's impossible. I'm sorry. I'm a reasonable guy. I'm not unintelligent here.
Mm.
The cult theory died when it was over 400 years old. You want to tell me there's a group of humans that are so perfect that for 400 years they pulled this off in multiple locations all around the world, and sometimes they do one and sometimes they do 100 and they never leave any evidence? It's impossible. I'm sorry. I don't even have to go down the road because evidence would have been left because humans, over 400 years. And then I looked at all the other theories and I said, this is really messed up. I'm right on this. And I really, as crazy as it sounds, I don't want to be right on this, but I can now name the anatomy of this guy. I can name its social behaviors. They flash lights at each other. The part that I mentioned that I don't know 100%, and I'm being honest, is there appears to be an intense bioluminescent feature on this guy, and I can't completely explain that, but I can explain that the dude has control of it. And there's no question of that because there's multiple videos where they flash at each other, almost like they're communicating or saying, I'm over here, maybe a warning that something's getting too close to them. But it's an intelligent communication between more than one of them. But also, there's been reports of blinding lights from them, and then they disappear. And what it appears to anyone, including me, is, gosh, a UFO just, warped through a hyperdrive and then took off, because you don't know what you're looking at. You
Yeah.
can misinterpret that information. But now that I've looked at it for so dang long, I go, oh my gosh, there's a notchback. Here's what he's doing. And it's just crystal clear to me that these are the culprits behind it. Now, I'll give you some background on me, um, just so you know I'm not some jerk off here. I'm a nobody, just to clarify. I'm a garbage man. I'm just a humble servant of God. Well, and I mean that. And I'm coming on here because it's an important message.
Yeah.
Uh, I've looked at cameras underground as part of my job for over 20 years, easy. And my job was to transcribe what I saw on my camera in an underground pipe, 30 feet underground, 250 feet out, and then transcribe that to words. Now, here's the interesting thing. I worked in an area where there are billionaires, and then we had slum areas and everything in between this area. But when you work for a billionaire, There's cameras on you. People stare at you. There's, their employees watching you. Everybody. It's like you're a thief, but it's okay because I'm not a thief and I do great work and it's never made me nervous and I'm there to gain their trust anyway.
Yeah.
That's my job. But I did this for 20 years and I got to pick the companies I worked for. And I'm not bragging, but I got good at what I did. And then I said, wow, what else can I learn so that instead of going into a job interview and begging the guy for a job, I can go in there swinging, my weenie around and go, which truck is mine? And I literally did that. But I'm proud of that. I also was very fair with them. I could have been a Madonna and asked for all kinds of stuff. I didn't. I only asked for reasonable stuff, but I wanted some high-tech equipment. And I was always adamant about that. But I found a great company. I lasted for a long time. Every time they dug up, my camera work was on the money. And I never lost my job. And that's saying a lot. So I stared at these stupid cameras. And ironically, police would shut down some of my job sites that were out in the streets. And what's funny is, when I'm waiting for an inspection to be done and have a permit signed off, I got a few hours to burn. He's there protecting me from some drunk, running in a construction zone. So we would talk, and it turns out that this new software came out. Here's a big piece of info for you guys. If you're not good at Photoshop, Photoshop's a complicated program, just to be clear. Anyone who says different is lying. It's made for experts. It's not an amateur program. And there's enough plugins in it, my God. So I said, there's got to be a better way for me to analyze like pictures of the moon. And it turns out one day God answered my call and he said, something's broken in my car. Can you come take a peek at it? And I fixed a little wire there. And he says, damn, you're good. And I said, dude, I can fix anything. And he said, hey, we got this new software. You any good with computers? And it turns out it was the software that law enforcement was using to like clarify security cameras like a license plate and make it from non-readable to readable. And I said, yeah, I'll come by tomorrow. And I went home and I got as much, I'm not even kidding you. I had like all kinds of contraband of, different memory sticks and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie. I plugged it in and I said, now all I need to do is find a copy of something like this or similar. So I don't work hard, I work smart. And that was genius because if it can clarify a license plate, it can clarify what I'm looking at. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to brag about, I know every single computer program out there. I'm looking to get the job done. So that's what I would do with those pictures and the videos. And it's just so obvious to me. If you watch the videos, I piece it together and I skip a lot of parts, and I apologize, but I've proven every little thing in between, and I show some concepts. But the big problem is in France, they have a system called ITER going up, which is a new nuclear power plant to power France, and maybe even some of the other countries, God knows, but it's a new type. And the problem, one of the side effects of it is it gives out enormous electromagnetic pulses. And what do you know? If you go to their website and you look at their schedule of the completion dates of each little portion, you'll find out that they're getting close to fully operational here, and they're testing some of these systems. And what happens when possibly they're testing? I would love to, here's how scientific I am. I want to be real to the, I believe in UFOs too, and I'm not going to shy from that. But I got to be true to what I'm looking at. And I want to see data like when did the ITER system do some test startups and then try to match it up to the dates of some mutilations. That's the kind of data I'm looking for. That's a match. You follow my logic?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not looking for somebody that looks at a picture and it's fuzzy as can be. And I'm not making fun of anyone. I'm just being honest. And there's websites you can go to right now that have that. And you can't see a damn thing in the picture. If I spit on this camera, you probably have a better picture than you would of whatever they're trying to show. And then they make up 15 different names for it. And it doesn't do a service to us, in my opinion. It's just as bad as spreading disinformation.
Yeah.
And I'm against that, unfortunately, because I really want to know the truth. And in order to find the truth, I had to hash through a bunch of that crap to find pure folders, and then I could start my hypothesis. So a lot of work went into this, fine tuning, but I'm grateful. And I'm going to be totally honest with you that I'm conscious and cognizant enough to be able to sit here and tell you I found something and then be a good guy and go, look, this is important. We need to know about this. You know, uh, I firmly believe after reading, let me finish up with Mr. Bigelow is really a big story. I apologize, I swayed from him. Robert Bigelow got the folder. This is that billionaire guy that can do
Yeah,
anything in the
yeah.
world with his time. And instead of being on a huge yacht, he's in this little fishing town that has no Wi Fi, that has no televisions, that's back in time 20 years, the ideal vacation spot.
Mm.
And he's going there where people are getting attacked, and he bought the government file from the government. People don't do that normally. This is these are red flags to me. But then I read about the report and I got access to the report. But here's the interesting. Then he comes back and he hears of this place, and it's nicknamed Skinwalker Ranch. It's a roughly 500-acre uh, country parcel, I guess you call it, in
Mm.
the state of Utah. And he finds out that it has similar behavior as Colaris para. And guess what? He buys it for 200 grand, sets up video cameras, all kinds of stuff. And then the government comes in and gives him close to a $20 million grant to study some unknown phenomena. It's very unclear because of the non-disclosure agreements what this is all about.
Mm.
And people have theorized, but in truth, nobody's talked because, well, Robert Bigelow's still alive. It's pretty simple. So, and he doesn't talk. But there's pictures, and they look like flying jellyfish over Skinwalker Ranch. And the story goes like this: the ranch, the U.S. Army uh, came in, treated the Indians like crap for the second, third, 45th, 79th time since Thanksgiving. And now they're doing it again here in Utah because they want to mine something and have an army base there. And the Indians don't want them there because it's their sacred land, which is their right. And so somehow the army overpowers them, pisses them off, and the Indians curse the land, and then they call them skinwalkers, some transforming entity that I just haven't seen enough data on. And I'm not being rude to anybody, but I just haven't seen enough similar videos that are clear that I can piece together from multiple
Mm.
angles. But what I did see was flying jellyfish over it. And I said, what in the Sam hell? And I said, what if Robert Bigelow got a $20 million grant to catch a notchback? Somebody'd have to get it. And then if he dies, let's hypothesize here. If he dies and all the workers, like let's say they built a little bunker that was strong enough to hold one, and I'm just being hypothetical. I can't prove any of this, but he did make the comment himself that he had an enormous laboratory there that was fully funded, something to that effect. And it was a strong statement. He was basically saying, I got a hell of a lab. It's not a little one, it's a big one. But let's hypothesize he catches one. Isn't this interesting to the government to know what in the hell's up there and actually catch it?
Mm.
It's and it would be scientifically important to dissect it, figure out what its weapon system is, get the samples from it. But here's the interesting thing: in the cattle mutilations, they keep finding different chemicals and different uh, makeups that don't make sense, but they do make sense when you add in the fact that this dude is not only a sucker, but he's injecting something as part of its defense mechanism or hunting habits, whatever you want to call it. And that chemical is part of what's in him that he's squirting back out. And they're finding it in the cattle. And that's why they're saying that their readings are inconclusive. Now, I hypothesized that Mr. Bigelow, he actually goes on all those MUFON circuits, and they all get paid money. I discovered this. I don't know, you may want to edit this out. It sounds rude, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
But I actually contacted uh, MUFON, and you can put this in there. I don't care. I burn these people in my videos, and I'm proud of it, unfortunately. Uh, I find this great discovery, and I'm giving the other people credit that have discovered it as well, but didn't piece it all together, but they still get credit. Dr. Joseph found this in space and did this before me. I'm the one who tied it with the cattle mutilations and the Dyatlov Pass, but I don't even care about the credit. My message is, what's happening here is somehow we have something mutated up in space that's a threat to us, that's dangerous. And I wanted to go somewhere else with this, and I lost track. Bear with me.
That's okay.
Uh, oh, uh, once I found this, I was so excited. I contacted a newspaper in New Mexico that did a story on cattle mutilations. I thought they'd be interested. And it was an actual American Indian who called me back. So I thought, sweet, this is even better. I can give back to this guy, right? They want to know the truth. Not interested, see you. I contacted the person through MUFON in Arizona, who's Linda Moulton Howe. I'll say her name. I could care less. She's the one who did the documentary in the '80s and has been studying this forever. And she's actually the one who interviews the guy with the electric arc welder noises, which is critical. But it's like she's on cocaine or something, because that was something so critical and different from everyone else, and an eyewitness. I mean, I would have done a 60-minute episode with that guy. Here's a possible eyewitness. Even if he's a Fruit Loop, let's just say he's full of it. I still would have interviewed him because he had something different as far as information. But then I contact that person, leave a message. Her assistant calls back, make sure he understands how I came up with my hypothesis. Never heard back from him. I call up the guy here who's the local through MUFON, who's a scam. Okay, this is who you're supposed to call when you see a UFO, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are the people you're supposed to trust, not the government, right?
Yeah.
So I call up the local one. He never contacted me back. I even sent him an email, and then I sent him all kinds of documentation proving it. Never got back to me. So I said, screw these people. I'm going to go around them. And so I called the head of MUFON, the head office, pardon me, not the head owner, and it's in Irvine, California. She talks to me for, God, it was like an hour. And I went over the whole thing. She was mind blown. I felt like David Blaine. I really did. Like I mind blew her. And then she's asking me all kinds of questions, like, what about the fireflies that have been seen around the International Space Station? And what I try to do is I keyed in on one thing to notch back. I don't know about the fireflies. Yes, do I think they have something to do with this? Yeah, I think it's another variety of these guys, on a smaller spectrum. I believe there's that, in my eyes, if you look at the fish tank, they told us it was empty out there. It's completely full. Matter of fact, there's a lot of things flying around out there. But I went to MUFON, and after that hour, I thought to myself, God, I'm going to be like famous. Like, I'm going to have to like beat reporters off with a stick. And she said, no, we're not going to post any of this. This is too frightening for the public. And I'm thinking to myself, what did you just say? That's what the government's supposed to say, not what MUFON's supposed to say. Now, she bragged about being nonprofit. None of them make a buck. And so I got mad, and I started using that same little OCD scientific stuff that I do, my little voodoo, and I started dissecting MUFON. And I come to find out the guy who was running it just got busted for pedophilia, whatever. He's a child predator, and okay, maybe that's just one person, right? Let's dig a little deeper. So I started posting my videos. I said, let's get it out to the public. Where's the public going to look? MUFON, and they're going to trust them. So I put it on there, and boy, half of them gave me like a thumbs up, and this is awesome information, and they probably actually watched it, with an open mind. And then a bunch of people came on there and made comments like there's not enough money in this industry, and just a bunch of mail that I started getting that just the way that the words were deciphered was they were talking about this pool of money and it only split so much, and get out of it. You're not welcome here. Not what a great discovery. And I'm going, what in the Sam hell is going on? I'm in the Twilight Zone. I was like convinced I died in my sleep, and this was like, a Simpsons version of the Twilight Zone. And so I started posting, and I said, now I can prove it. I'll post on the site under my video on MUFON, and I'm going to prove that these people that are claiming to be helpful nonprofit people are bad. And I got my state and the state that Linda Moulton Howe is in, and boy, it wasn't hard to get them to act like trolls because as soon as I posted, that's all it took. And the lady in Arizona, oh, he's an armchair guy that's, just sit there drinking back beers that's 400 pounds, that solved this in 20 minutes. And I'm going, screw you, lady. But here's the funny thing is they're supposed to be nonprofit. So I started digging up her. They all have books. They all do these conventions and they all get paid big time for it because all these people are like sheep, go to the conventions and think they're going to be telling them the truth. And all they're doing is being led in a certain direction and never getting what I'm doing. I
Yeah.
want the ITER schedule and I want the cattle mutilation schedule. There you have it. That's going to solve this. I don't want somebody saying, and I'm not being rude to them, but I'm being honest. Some of the recent episodes really pissed me off. One of them is two people, that are blacked out and they're doing an interview with them. There's no pictures, there's no evidence. I can have people over in my backyard. I'm out in the country. Trust me, get a couple cases of beer. They'll tell you all kinds of stuff. Now, how much of it is credible? Probably none. But that you follow my logic. I want to go after the true answers. Robert Bigelow knows the answer. I don't think so. I know so. There's one guy that has all those little pieces of the puzzle that I can't solve that has them on this planet. They shouldn't have stormed Area 51. They should have stormed this guy's building, but they shouldn't have stormed it. They should have just called him up.
Yeah.
Because at some point this guy's going to talk. By
Yeah.
the way, he hasn't been getting many government contracts. I think really weird outside of the box. He hasn't been getting many government contracts. He's kind of been spanked and cut off and let a bunch of employees go. You never know. Some guys like this might talk, and it's happened in the past, but a lot of people didn't listen or realize how important that person was, that his data might be extremely credible versus non-credible. When I weigh things like a newspaper article, it gets like a 10% weighting. I don't put a lot into it. When I start seeing autopsy reports or police reports or something firsthand, that starts getting up towards that 80 percentile range. And it's hard to make hundreds out of all these categories. But I'll tell you, after looking at cameras for over 20 years, I actually took one of my favorite pictures is called the Spires location on the moon. Have you heard of that?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it looks like little teepee huts, right?
Yeah.
Like tree. I mean, it's the damnedest pictures. And it's almost a 3D, like one of those pictures that you look with all the dots and you look at it long enough and it makes out a face or something. It's almost like looking at one of those. But the closer I looked, and I snuck it through some software that I can't mention, that I may have mentioned before, and I came up to something really interesting, but it didn't make sense at the time. Now remember, this is like 20 years ago, but it looked like those spires were like a triangle shaped, like a hut. And it looked to me like there was like a triangular shaped door and it looked like a light on. And I said, this is absolutely nuts. This is like there's something that's phosphorus on the moon's surface, or, I thought it was a trick of the imagination. And it wasn't one of them, it was all of them. They all had like a light and a porch. And then there was little circular areas in the middle with something luminescent like that. And I'm going, if I'm an advanced technology and I'm trying to do the UFO community good, I'm going to start thinking Kardashev scale 3, where some civilization is able to master the universe per se. They're not going to build houses like you or I do. They're going to build like a mud hut type thing, maybe out of rock or something that's natural, because they've learned how to master the universe. They don't waste resources. They're not green and recyclers. They've mastered everything. They know every ingredient in the planet. And I'm looking at that picture, and it's funny. They're like little domes with little lights. Now, the interesting thing is, I thought I saw that same area, except I looked at pictures of other planets, and it was extremely similar with the construction. And I thought I was going nuts. And don't forget, a lot of scientists that are good are on that border between nuts and sanity. And I thought that was far-fetched. But the interesting thing is, there's a thing called a mud hut here on our planet, and it's very common in different places. You don't find it here in the United States because we all want to drive Cadillacs and have big 3-story houses on the beach, but you do find it in impoverished countries right now. They're rebuilding a lot of them using this, and it's genius. It's like 2 foot wide sandbags. The bags are biodegradable. They're filled with sand or dirt or whatever's close by. They're bulletproof. They're earthquake proof. I mean, this isn't like stupid technology. This beats a house. It's stronger. And people are putting windows in them and things of that nature. But what was funny was we plaster them here on Earth. And if I look at that same picture, I got a picture of that spire. And I was blown away going, wait a minute, is this some advanced technology building these? Because that's how they would do it. I'm not going to find a 2-story wood house with shingle roofs on the moon or Saturn. The technology is going to be different, and I always try to think that way. Right now, my mind is boggled because I'm convinced there's things flying around. By the way, on the moon, those dots that I told you about where they were having their little sex orgies in the back room, they claimed that, it was coffee stains. They made up a bunch of reasons. But it turns out the circles moved. I actually went through a bunch of the patterns, and one of my tricks was I only have the pictures, but I can put them in a editing thing and make it move. And guess what? They moved in synchronicity. And I said, that's either the most perfect coffee stain, or whatever they're doing, or there's something moving there. But on some of those white dots, they had one little character trait that I noticed, a notch. Now, about not even a month ago, there's this mind-blowing video of notchbacks, maybe a little longer than that. I know it's in one of the videos, but it's a whole group of notchbacks, and they look white on the moon. Maybe it's because of the way the sun's hitting them, and that's how it's reflecting. Maybe they have a different outer skin layer that's protecting them from the harsh environments. Maybe they're in sleep mode. I don't know. But what I do know is about half a dozen of them blow through the moon into space and fly off. And it's another crystal clear video where you go, oh my God, there's notchbacks. So now we have them on the moon for the last 50 years from these Apollo pictures. It's on every space mission that have run into. There's an amazing video that I went nuts on that's a Russian cosmonaut, and I believe it to be real. I believe he might be in a Soyuz 7. I'm not positive, but the Central Command is telling him to shut up in Russian really loudly. And he's filming out the window of all the notchbacks saying, look at all this life, it's out there. But he misinterpreted it. To me, I heard there's UFOs with people in it, aliens. And I'm being honest, like everyone else. But he didn't know what he was looking at, and it was a bunch of notchbacks. And it's a crystal clear film, and I deem it credible because there's over 100 round circular guys with notches interacting with each other, going in and out of our atmosphere, and they're like a simple animal. And what a great government cover-up if you think about it. I feel like I'm nuts, but why not tell the people, yeah, that's a metal UFO with people in it? That's less scary than what's really going on.
Why do you think the government don't want to think of them as single cell amoebas, or not? Why do you think they're scared to say that they're some sort of living organism? I mean, I spoke to someone the other day actually who made an interesting idea and said that, well, if aliens turn, if there was to be aliens turn up, what would they actually be? And they were thinking of the world as one organism and things, and they said, well, maybe aliens would actually be a virus. It would be a virus. It would look like an alien to us, but it would be a type of virus. But why do you think the government don't want us to think of them as biological?
It's a great question. Well, it's frightening. It's weird to think of it this way, but let's hypothesize and do an experiment that ET comes down and there's 3 of them in a craft, and then a notchback comes down. Nothing personal, but if I get to do the welcome greeting to one of them, I'm going over to the one that I deem friendlier, which is the UFO and the 2 guys. And I don't know that for a fact, but I know the other one's an animal, and I know for a fact growing up that if I touch the wrong dog's nose, he's going to bite me, And now that I've discovered all about them, they're absolutely frightening. But there's so many different implications, but one of them that I can't wrap my head around is the size difference. Now, based on the time difference between our evolution and theirs, they've had plenty of time to get big and no restrictions out in space. And what I mean by that is, like, if you buy a fish tank and you put a fish in it, they'll typically adapt to that size of the tank. Well, here there's no tank. They're free to grow as large as they want. And uh, it just puts a weird implication of, are we microscopic in the world? Are we like, is this an episode of the Twilight Zone where we're a piece of dust behind someone's commode? I mean, it really puts some big implications, but there's a safety implication. We can't catch them or kill them evidently too well, because I've never seen evidence of one on the ground yet. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but uh, they're obviously outmaneuvering our best jet fighters, and it's making the pilots so nervous that they're coming forward with the videotapes. That's the reality of it. And I believe that they're living organisms, and it's really got to be frightening when you see it. It's got to be almost like you're looking at anime and the real world at the same time, because they're making motions that don't make sense. But the weird thing is, once again, if you backtrack that amoeba to the notchback, the movements are absolutely, everything's identical across it's mind blowing to me. It's not a maybe, it's a match, but they seem to have a little bit extra, like the luminosity feature of it. And people say, well, Mike, you're crazy. Well, there's a thing called a firefly. Don't forget, there's also a thing called an electric eel. And if you read about how its body works, it stuns its prey by electrocuting it. So I know it sounds crazy with plasma as a weapon on here. Trust me, it's coming out of my mouth, and it doesn't really roll off. It sounds weird. But there are creatures that have adapted that do amazing things. Don't forget, the electric eel is underwater doing this. This experiment just isn't a bird that produces electricity. This is something that's underwater. So now we have something flying that's adapted, that's, in my opinion, danger. I think what happened at the Dyatlov Pass incident is really simply explained. Uh, I went into that one. Again, I didn't look to solve this. I just was looking at forensics, and then they would refer to other places, and then I just started expanding my mind. But Dyatlov Pass has parachute percussion bombs, I guess you can call them, in the air, and it's coming out of the old Soviet Union. I think they called it the aeroport back then. Now it's the Russian spaceport. It's the equivalent of our NASA. It's the headquarters. That's what's right next to Dyatlov base. That's a time that we were experimenting because of nuclear war with all kinds of crap that wasn't certified to be done at the time. And I think that they called the notchbacks by accident, set off some parachute bombs, pissed them off. They landed, and they happened to land near the people that were the unfortunate hitchhikers, and they were attacked, unfortunately, because these guys were provoked. I don't think that these guys are hunting humans. And besides, based on their size category, if I'm right on the bacteria, we're a Tootsie Roll. We're nothing.
Yeah.
But right? I mean, compare a 2,000-pound cattle to me. And by the way, an interesting tidbit that I proved that I thought was a fun one was a 2,000-pound animal gets lifted up and is found, a mile somewhere different.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh,
Can you hear?
yeah. So I think it broke off there.
It's had some hiccups here. I apologize.
That's all right, no problem.
Okay, you asked some questions. I've tried to. Have I painted the right picture
Yeah,
here?
do you know? I think you've covered it really well, and that's kind of what I wanted to achieve. Because as much as I've seen a lot of your videos, and a few of the people I know have seen your videos, I don't actually think it is that well known, and it'd be sort of nice. It's nice
No.
that I think we've covered quite a lot there, and there's a lot of things for people to actually scratch their heads and go and research. Like the billionaire guy you were talking about. And obviously to check out your videos. So I think we've covered
I don't
loads.
understand. It's beyond me. if I ever move to Vegas, my parents are out there, by the way, and that's where he lives. If I ever saw him in a casino, I would flat out take the opportunity. I don't want your autograph, dude. Tell me the truth. Did you catch one? I mean, I just really, I'm after the truth. I'm
Mm.
trying to find this out in
It's
my
int-
life.
it's interesting to also, it makes you think about, like you were saying, really the world as an organism, and our place in it, and that that it makes you think of everything as more organic, and if there's
Absolutely.
even the fact that maybe we're looking at these things as flying, and you're thinking, well, how does that make sense with amoebas normally found in water? Well, it makes you question things like their density and the frequency
Correct.
that they're operating on, and they might actually be swimming in the air. They're not actually flying, they're swimming based on their
That's what I
their own,
believe.
yeah, and based
You're
on
on
their,
money. They're really not, and that's what I've come to the conclusion. They're not flying, they're swimming
yeah,
because the movements are that of swimming. I
yeah.
just can't figure it out other than perhaps they've taken some of the plasma into their body and they're gaseous, which would make them lighter, but there's no way I can prove any of that. Unless I got samples, and there's no way anyone's going to get their hand. One of these days, I'm telling you, one of these things is going to land on top of a building and it'll injure someone who's worth $1 and it'll become news. And it's going to happen soon because I've been tracking these suckers and I'm telling you right now, there is a huge, uh, a much larger amount of them being seen and much more damage
Mm.
being done to the cattle recently. It's alarming. I mean, it's really, really alarming.
Uh,
Anyway,
yeah, and I mean also, the electromagnetic, activity of the Earth,
it's us.
it's increasing, isn't it? And
Yeah, and
it,
and as we increase that, there's no question there's more of them. It's
mm,
not a maybe, there's a direct correlation. The STS video is a inadvertent scientific experiment proving what they are. Because if there wasn't the electromagnetic experiment during that, they could have claimed the ice and got away with it. But because of that, because of the pseudopods, because of there was too much detail in that. You know what's funny? Have you seen that video? I've actually sometimes I watch that video just for the heck of it. Nothing like smoking a few bowls and watching NASA. We call them not another stupid answer here in the States, but it's interesting. During that video, all the people in the mission control with their keyboards,
yeah,
there's fucking 4 mile long critters flying
yeah,
across the street. But what's funny is this is an older time where they're not prepared for this. They're not that great at actors, but not one of them is looking at the screen with any seriousness. They're trying to find something else to do. And that's a dead giveaway. I mean, that this is something legit. This is their footage.
yeah.
I'm nervous for what's going to happen. If ITER gets up and running and you guys start having 100 to 200 cattle mutilations on a daily basis in conjunction with coronavirus, that's a game over.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean, there's a
definitely here, and in France more recently now, to see how it links. And there's other factors, aren't there? What you're describing explains a lot of things that over the years where people have seen these things. Some people have said that they were seen during Hiroshima or certain nuclear
the
events.
Foo
You've also then,
Fighters. Wasn't that unbelievable?
yeah, but it
That
makes,
when I backtracked again, I didn't look to solve this. This wasn't my goal. I didn't wake
mm,
up and okay, the Foo Fighters, human mutilations. It just stumbled. But then when I started looking back, I think that there's so many events that have happened that can be explained by these guys credibly. By the way, I'm working. I stopped now because it's getting a little bit too dangerous. I've actually been working with law enforcement in Oregon where cattle mutilations are kind of like France. They've been peaking. We've only been getting like 5 at a time, head of cattle gone, things of that nature. But I actually worked with law enforcement, and guess what? They call back and ask questions. Now, if I was them and somebody called me and said I solved cattle mutilations. You got about a minute, minute and a half max before I hang up. I mean, but you follow my logic? Because they got to have a bunch of crazy kooks call on them with, and
Mm.
they say it in the newspapers that people are inundating them with stupid UFO ideas, and that's
Mm.
what they usually write in the paper. They're calling me, not only calling me back, I've been referred to some of the other employees to explain it to them. I've also been recorded, and I believe the FBI was there in the room with them by the state police, given them. And luckily, I gave them a way more basic, tuned down version than I gave you today because I didn't want to get into too much trouble. You follow my logic? I just want to
Yeah,
give a
sure.
simple answer. You know, what
Mm.
if this, let's hypothesize for a second. What if this is an advanced civilization and they genetically mutated these guys and they're keeping an eye on us? And I don't know this, but I'm just saying a hypothesis. What if God made a mistake and our universe isn't perfect and a bunch of bacteria and viruses come and eat us all? I mean, you know, there's a lot of implications here that are really on a large scale. And I got to get this message out that, you know, the the guy that died in uh, Brazil had a family, and they don't know how he died to this day because I can't translate good Portuguese on my videos. I've tried. I've sent it down there. I've plastered this. I've plastered on NASA, the sheriffs, law enforcement. Who else where I shouldn't? Every newspaper you can think of. France really ripped me behind. These are the things you learn as you go on. When I sent emails to France, 90% of them got intercepted and never made it to their destination. You know how tough the media is there? They're scrutinized by their government. They're completely scrutinized on what they can
Mm.
and say. And so here I am, you know, gosh, I'll give them my video and, you know, it'll be all over France by tomorrow and maybe they'll be catching one. Nope.
No.
My stuff to get through. So it's been a hard, long journey. Anyway,
Absolutely.
did you get enough, you think, to.
Yeah, Mike, this has been fantastic. I think we got, a great amount there, and I really appreciate you coming on to share, your
Oh, thank you. It's important to me.
yeah, and I mean, I'd love to keep in touch with you as well because these things may develop over the next 6 months to a year, and if there's been any like big developments or, like you say, the nuclear program in France does sort of get underway, you never know. There may be things that change, and how these relate to things going on in current events like coronavirus and things like that. So it would be great to catch up with you and get an update and see if you found anything else.
Okay. Fantastic. I thank you so much for having me on. I do appreciate it.
No worries, and thank you for doing it for us, and hopefully speak to you again soon.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Cheers, Mike. Take care.